and ministers of health came together in an emergency meeting of the ministerial meeting to discuss mental strategy and then endorse an adapted strategy. If you all recall, when we issued the joint continental strategy last year, we didn't have the issues of variant. We didn't even know what variants would come out, and we didn't have vaccines. Now we have vaccines, we have variants, and we are going through, some countries are going through the third wave. So it was time for all of us to look at this. So we endorse a strategy that is underpinned by three key components: enhanced prevention, enhanced monitoring, and enhanced treatment. Underneath the enhanced prevention, we are saying that member states will need to enhance the ability to implement public health measures, including masking, avoid gatherings as much as possible, and then, of course, roll out vaccination. Underneath monitoring, we are monitoring for the variants. We know how these variants are emerging. We know the impact they are having on potential impact on vaccines. And then on a need treatment, they will ask all countries to be prepared with the COVID treatment medications, that is the accessories needed for that, as well as availability of oxygen, such that when and if we are hit with the scale of what we are seeing in India, prepared. That is the adapted strategy. That we will the chair of the African Union and was attended by Dr. Tedros, Dr. Moeti, and many other key partners as well. So I just wanted to say that before I segue to vaccines. As of the 10th of May, a total of 38 million vaccine doses have been acquired, 38 million. And of those, 22.4 million doses have been administered. This figure represents coverage of 1.48% at the continental level, with a 0.4% of the population having received full vaccine regimen. This is slightly up by 0.1%. And to date, the AU member states have used a total of close to 58.87% of vaccine supplies. And the breakdown is as follows. Let me start with Rwanda, where I am, which is truly a remarkable and success story. They received 290,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines, and they have immunized everyone with that. So that is 100% of. They also, in March, received 102,000 doses of Pfizer vaccines, and half of one have been used, which means they are now waiting for the lapse period to occur, and then they administer the remaining doses. That is really remarkable. We should be pursuing these vaccinations. Morocco have vaccinated 11.9% of its population. That is fully vaccinated with the 2 doses. Ethiopia has used up 1.3 million of its doses. That represents 52% of its supplies, and that is the 0.1% of the total population. Egypt, very similarly, 1.13 million doses use of its supplies. That is 86%, and this represents 0.24% of its population fully vaccinated. And Kenya, 917,000 doses, 88% of its supply use, and the coverage is 1.7%. I'll end here and let my colleague, friend, and Faisal discuss the Nigeria situation briefly and give you the update on this very successful progress that he is recording in Nigeria. Wayne, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. John. Yes, Faisal Shuaib. Now, he is the Executive Director and the Chief Executive Officer of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Dr. Faisal, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Wayne, and thank you very much, Dr. John, for inviting me to this press briefing. So good morning, everyone. Nigeria's public health teams are working hard. We have a lot of gratitude to this health that they're providing a service to all Nigerians. Vaccination is ongoing across all states. As of today, 1,748,242 Nigerians have been vaccinated. This represents 86.9% of the number of Nigerians that were targeted with the first dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. We have rolled out a digitized registration and immunization data system. This is the first of its kind in Nigeria. This is to help ensure efficiency and accountability in our vaccination. Nigerians rather than partially inoculate 4 Nigerians. We are removing an element of risk that was becoming too high. Following this strategy, we have already started administering second doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca. In addition to health workers, frontliners and above, and persons aged 50 and above are being advised to visit any designated vaccination sites to receive their vaccine doses, be this first or the second dose. We are also advising that people who their first dose should check their vaccination cards for the date of their second dose and ensure that they receive the second dose to gain full protection against COVID-19. Nigerians have shown incredible interest in receiving the vaccine and have been cooperating with our health teams to help the system succeed. This is incredibly important because to move beyond COVID-19, this must be a national effort. I am here today to answer any questions you may have, and I look forward to the discussion. I'd like to seize this opportunity to say to our Muslim brothers and sisters, Eid Mubarak. It has been a difficult year, but we must mark these moments in our daily lives. Once again, thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Faisal, and congratulations on that vaccination program, which is progressing very well in Nigeria. Let us move on to our question and answer. And Dr. John, the following questions are for you, and they're coming from Nimi Princewell in Africa. So she has 3 questions. She says, is the Africa CDC worried that at a time that Africa is grappling with shortages in COVID-19 vaccine supply, that some countries such as the DRC, Malawi, and South Sudan are letting thousands of unused shots go to waste? So that's the first part of her question. Then she said, will the DRC, Sudan, receive more vaccines from COVAX, from the African Union or elsewhere? And then finally, she says, how is the attitude of these countries and other countries in Africa to avoid future vaccine wastage?
So thank you, Wayne, and thank you, colleagues from the CNN. I think clearly, let's be very clear that DRC has not wasted vaccines. I must extend a recognition to the very remarkable and strategic move they did. They recognized that they were not going to use all the vaccines in a timely fashion, and then call on the COVAX, take those excess vaccines and redistribute them. And I believe that effort is ongoing. We are not directly managing that effort. I mean, COVAX and UNICEF are doing that. So I think that we must acknowledge their wisdom in doing that. Having said that, I strongly encourage all countries in Africa to work with the population, sensitize them so that the community can own this effort. As Dr. Pfizer said, we have to win this battle, all of us. I mean, it is not a question of public health and leaders and political leaders looking for the vaccines and the population is not taking up the vaccines. We have to do this together so that we win this war against COVID-19. I think Africa CDC, as I just explained, has just announced an adjusted strategy or an adapted strategy that is calling for enhanced prevention, enhanced monitoring and treatment. Underneath that prevention pillar is really increased uptake of vaccines. So again, it is our appeal to all member states to continue to do that. The reason that I brought in Dr. Pfizer today is to share the great experience in Nigeria. When we started these efforts, I mean, there was all talk about the perception that people in Nigeria were getting vaccines, but you can just report that there's really huge uptake of vaccines in Nigeria, almost 100% uptake in Rwanda. So those stories must be shared and use that to encourage other countries that are strong. We hope that countries like Nigeria and Rwanda will be able to work with us to do exchange programs and work with other countries that are struggling vaccination program. That is all the whole purpose of the unity as Africa CDC, which is a continental organization, brings to in these efforts.
Thank you very much, John. In the interest of time, I think I will limit the number of questions coming from each reporter. And so I'll start with Paul Adepoju, who had 4 questions, but I'll take 2, and those are for Dr. Faisal. He says, Nigeria administered, what is the approach to vaccine rollout among internally displaced persons and parts of the Boko Haram insurgency? That's the first question I'm going to give to you. And the second one is, how many doses are still?
Yeah, thank you very much, Win. And thank you very much, Paul Adepoju, for that question. So what we are doing in Nigeria is really learning from what was successful with the polio eradication program. So as you may be, we just recently, just in 2020, were declared white polio virus free. One of the reasons why we had some delays in eradicating polio was because of the Boko Haram insurgency, insecurity in the northeast. This made it difficult for health workers to access some settlements, and in some instances, it was difficult to even reach large swaths of communities. So we learned our lessons from the polio eradication program, and in our planning for these security compromised areas, we engaged the military, just like we did with the polio eradication program. Those areas that we could access, health workers, civilians were free to go and access the communities and ensure a comprehensive package of health services. So we did not go there with just polio vaccines. We went there with additional health services, such as providing malaria treatment, nutritional interventions. And in those areas where, due to insecurity, civilian health workers could not go, we actually had military drop oral polio vaccines in the mouths of children in areas that are insecure. In the same vein, we have also mapped out strategies to make sure that the military supports the vaccination of people in security compromised areas. In the first phase of our vaccination program, we've really focused on the health workers, first responders, frontline, beginning to also vaccinate those that are 50 years and above. So in this first phase, we've not really focused on those security compromised areas because a lot of those people are going to be people who are either that are 18 years and above. And for those individuals that are in the internally displaced camps, we have a program that takes the vaccines to those IDP camps, working with our development partners to ensure that these occupants of the IDPs actually get their vaccines. Because of their vulnerable nature, they are actually prioritized to get the vaccines, just like people who are in correctional homes, because these are the people that are not likely to get the vaccines. And one of the core elements of the COVAX facility is equity, right? So we have brought this into our vaccination program to make sure that there's equitable access to the vaccines. On the second questions about the number of doses that are left in Nigeria. So like I mentioned, what we did in Nigeria was to actually divide the 4 million doses into two compartments. The first dose, we're going to give everybody their first doses. So 2 million Nigerians, and just about 2 million Nigerians have almost got their vaccines. That's about 90% is where we are. But with the second doses, we're now beginning to vaccinate those people who already have the first dose and have gone at least 6 weeks since they had the first doses. So approximately we have around 2 million doses that we plan to give exactly the same people that have taken their first doses, bearing in mind that we have to give an interval of between 6 weeks to 12 weeks to make sure that we get the greatest immune response for these vaccines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faisal. Let's go now to someone who's online, Gabrielle Steinhauser. Good morning, Gabrielle. Please tell us your news agency and kindly ask your question.
Hi, Gabrielle Steinhauser from the Wall Street Journal. Thank you so much for taking my question. It's for actually both Dr. John and Dr. Faisal. The US just moved COVID vaccines for high school students from the age of 12. Do you have a reaction to that, given the extreme shortage of vaccine doses faced by African countries? I mean, is that really the correct global public health response to this pandemic, to start vaccinating low-risk teenagers now, while high-risk personnel and people in Africa are still without vaccines and, you know, no real prospect of getting these shots anytime soon? And then a second question, in addition to dose sharing, are there other things that African countries need right now? Are there still shortages of reagents for testing and sequencing, for testing cartridges, things like that? Is that still an issue that needs to be addressed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think in the interests of time, I will just ask Dr. John to respond briefly to your two questions. Dr. John.
No, absolutely. I think two excellent questions. I mean, the first is about US vaccinating higher children. We cannot influence. What we are saying is that we most people speed and at scale across the word here is now, because if we delay in redistributing these vaccines, and they only get to the continent later in the year, the virus would have seeded itself significantly into the population, and it will become very difficult. Secondly, is that we are seeing the emergence of these variants all across. I mean, today I just announced that about 6 countries that have now recorded the 617 variant originally identified in India. If we vaccinate at scale, we will inhibit the emergence of these variants, and it will be a win for everybody across the board. Lastly, Africa still has a challenge across the board with respect to the vaccination commodities, which include testing. We should always remember that testing continues to be the centrality of what we must do to win the battle COVID-19. Just announced today that 25% drop in tests, especially as the positivity rate is high. So testing, the vaccination commodities are all supplies that we need to support member states across the 55 countries in Africa to be able to vaccinate at speed and at scale. But access to vaccines now is critical.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Let's move on to questions coming from Sarah Jerving, who is with DEVEX. And she says, at the summit last weekend, the head of Afreximbank said that there were only 5 countries that had completed their orders for the J&J vaccines, and that the order book would be closing soon. What happens when what happens to the unsecured doses when the order book does close? And why do you think that countries are slow or uninterested in completing these orders? That's for you, Dr. John.
Yeah, I think that we continue to encourage all countries, member states in Africa, to go to the platform that is the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team to acquire their vaccines. You can only count on your own, take your destiny into your hands by investing in your own health security. We all know that even if COVID gave us all the vaccines that they promised they would provide, they were only going to give us about 30% of the doses. And then strategy, we all had agreed that unless we vaccinate at least 60% of the population, we were likely not going to eliminate this pandemic from the continent. Just, I'm sure with respect to that, I mean, the fact that the United States is even expanding its vaccination to a lower age group, and China is active in its target of trying to vaccinate up to 80% of its population, and I believe Europe as well, it speaks to that fact that we as a continent cannot be a continent that says we will only vaccinate with less than 30% of our population. So it's a strong call to an appeal to all our countries to go to the platform and get those vaccines that we've worked very hard to secure 220 million doses of vaccines, the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, through the platform. So that's all I can say. I mean, we do our part, and we expect that countries should do their part so that we win this battle quickly.
Thank you very much. Let me take this question and perhaps give it to Faisal to start with. So it's from Coletta Wanjohi, and she says, how dire is the situation of oxygen supply shortage in Africa? And also, the second part is will be for Dr. John, but let me give this one to Faisal. Are you facing shortages in oxygen supply in Nigeria? And if so, how dire is the situation?
As you may be aware, we're at a point in Nigeria where we're seeing a plateauing of the pandemic. So we're not at the point where we have large numbers of COVID-19 cases. But what we're already doing is preparing for a potential third wave. We are taking lessons from what has happened in India to know that, if the right non-pharmaceutical interventions are not followed, especially following celebrations such as the Eid political engagements, that we might actually have an increase in the number of cases. So what we've done ahead of time is to ensure that we ramp up our capacity to produce oxygen. So in every state of Nigeria right now, we're establishing oxygen plants in states like Lagos, where the pandemic has been really crucial. We have some 3 to 4 oxygen plants already being developed. All of this preparing for a situation where we may be needing them. So we're preparing quite hard. And I know that many countries across the continent are also beginning to prepare, but there's no doubt about the fact that we need to ramp up our capacity to provide oxygen because this is something that can happen in any, the shortages is something that can happen in any country.
Thank you very much. And Dr. John, very briefly, can you comment on any recommended solutions to the oxygen problem that the African Union is thinking about?
As I just mentioned, is exactly what we're encouraging countries to do, to set up strengthen their oxygen plans. We ourselves, as indicated, supplying countries with oxygen concentrators. Just last week, we supported countries, 26 countries with 700 of those. But the key is the countries to take surely that enhanced monitoring, enhanced treatment, especially making sure that oxygen is available and that you do not get where you are with the pandemic. We saw what happened in India, and Pfizer is extremely correct in that. At a point in March, they were recording just about less than 200 deaths a day, and then suddenly see where they are today. So this is a virus that is very capable of deceiving you, and then the spread. The best thing to go about this is to over prepare and not get to use those oxygen supplies done to be, then you start scrambling for it. It becomes extremely difficult when you are caught off guard with this pandemic. Let me just, before I end, go back to Mimi Princeworth's question with respect to Malawi and South Sudan. I mean, we will continue to engage with we and South Sudan. The centrality of joint continental strategy is based on the need to cooperate, to collaborate, to communicate, as well as to cooperate. Now, it is also underpinned by the fact that we reach African Union that we cannot leave any. So we will continue to work with Malawi and South Sudan to address the issues that they are facing with respect to the uptake of the vaccines. We cannot leave any member states behind because we believe strongly that if all countries do not approach it similarly, we will not be able to eliminate COVID from Africa.
Thank you very much. I'll just two quick last questions, Dr. First one is from Alexander Winning, who is with Reuters. And I'll take this question out of the three that she has. Is Johnson & Johnson still on course to deliver the 220 vaccines in the third quarter? And do you know in which month they will become available?
Oh, the answer is yes, very strong yes. I think Johnson & Johnson is the third quarter will either be, we are working very hard with Johnson & Johnson every day, and the third quarter will either be the beginning of August or late July. We are still pressing hard to see if we can actually have any early deliveries because of the overall shortage and challenging vaccine situation. So yes, we are still on course for that delivery.
Thank you for that. And then our last correspondent is Carlos Mureiti, who is the East Africa correspondent for the Quartz. And his question is CDC about the recent increase in COVID-19 cases in South Africa. And he notes that cases of COVID-19 have increased in South Africa recently after remaining relatively flat since a second wave of the pandemic ended in February, but that over the past 7 days, the country has recorded a 46% uptick in cases nationwide. That's for you, Dr. John.
No, absolutely. This is not unexpected. I mean, this is a pandemic, and public health measures alone will not address this pandemic. They will continue to enable us to blunt the pandemic, but they will not get us to ground the virus and make it not spread. Because again, as I say, if you offer the virus an opportunity, it spreads. We have to balance between saving lives and saving economies. But South Africa has demonstrated over and over that they were able to go to the top and then bring the virus down and go up to the top. And so I have no doubt that they will do the right thing to bring it to put in place appropriate measures to contain the virus, even without extensive spread of the vaccines. The problem with public health measures is that you cannot use that in winning a pandemic. You have to bring in vaccines aggressively to bring it down. Kenya has gone through the third wave very, I would say, very successfully. We've seen it bend the curve 3 times, the first wave, the second wave, and now they are going down the hill with respect to the third wave. So I have no doubt that those countries are truly success stories that need to be really recognized in that effort. But it also shows you the challenge in fighting this battle against COVID-19 on the continent without rapid access to vaccines.
Thank you very much, John. Colleagues, unfortunately, we have to bring our press briefing to a close today. We had indicated initially that we would have 40 minutes, and we're just about nearly on 40 minutes. So let me then ask our panelists for their final closing statements, starting with Dr. Faisal Schwab. Over to you, Dr. Faisal.
Yeah, thank you very much. On my part, I'd like to congratulate all of the hard work that is going on at the Africa CDC and all of the countries that are doing the best that they can, given the resources to flatten the curve. But I think a very important issue is the issue of vaccine nationalism. There's nothing like a partial eradication of a disease for us to ensure that we eradicate COVID-19 everywhere. Then there has to be greater and equitable access to vaccines. So I hope that this is something that more developed countries will be looking at so that we can quickly end this pandemic and get back to near normal lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal. Dr. John, your final closing statements.
No, absolutely. I fully agree with what Dr. Faisal just said. But and by the way, to thank him for creating the time out of his very busy schedule to share the wonderful experience in Nigeria. We should share those success stories, and it's what I'm doing in Rwanda, and we'll continue to find the success stories. And as of course, when it's not going well in some countries, we also bring them to your attention and discuss it and find ways that we can collectively work together to resolve them. So I just have 2 messages to conclude. One is, again, recognizing and wishing our brothers and sisters who are celebrating the Eid Mubarak holiday to do that safely. And that we should always remember that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and that you want to deny this virus the opportunity to spread as much as possible. Second message is about the adapted strategy that we all want to work collectively again to ensure that we support countries to implement the adapted strategy, which is guided by enhanced prevention, which is increasing our public health measures. I've been walking the streets of Rwanda or driving through the streets of Rwanda, Kigali. I'm very impressed that by the near universality in the way people are wearing masks, really consistently. And I keep looking across the street and counting people that are wearing masks. I'm very, very encouraged. If we do that across the continent, then we have a very good chance of continuing to wage the virus, blunt it until we get the vaccines. The second pillar of that strategy is enhanced monitoring. the issues of surveillance for mutants is very important. We continue to learn more about this virus as mutants occur. We have offered a platform, the Africa CDC Pathogen Genomic Network, that can support all member states to identify them. So please work with us closely as much as possible. And of course, thirdly is really the enhanced treatment, by really focusing on some basic things like availability of oxygen, so that we are not surprised. Do not be complacent. Do not take those decreasing numbers. It should not deceive us that the numbers are decreasing and then we kind of relax. The virus will surprise us and we find ourselves in the situation that will be extremely challenging. So I thank you as always for offering the opportunity to have this wonderful dialogue.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. That was Dr. John Nkengasong, the director of the Africa CDC, who today was joined by Dr. Faisal Shuaib, the executive director and CEO of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency in Nigeria. We thank you very much both for having taken this to be with us, and then also very much to our colleagues from the media for joining us as you do every Thursday. To colleagues behind the scenes, thank you. And to everyone, let's meet again next week at the same time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.